The best example of best class SEO is if you look at Wikipedia. If you do a Google search today for just about anything, you're probably going to see Wikipedia ranking in like the top 3 of Google for just about everything. But the secret of Wikipedia is
I appreciate you carving out some time to talk today, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You're in LA. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. I am in LA, and when you said you had a studio set up and you sent me a picture, I saw a picture of like a conference room table, and I could tell you have some dope cameras and a control center and good lighting.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that you had this full blown. Well, we had to pick the green screen setup because you've got this full blown thing here.
Why not? Right.
I just thought it'd be fun. So. We got introduced through a mutual friend, Eric Huberman, who's also been on the show. Mm-hmm. Also has a marketing agency, but very different than yours.
He does. Yes.
You are. I watched a video in prep for this of your journey from 0 to 20 million as an agency owner, and the lessons that you learned there, which was awesome.
Thank you.
I want to hit on a lot of things around that, but let's start with SEO as the beginning, and you can tell me how you found SEO in the first place, but your agency is specifically SEO, right?
Yes. SEO, some paid marketing as well. And for the most part, we work with law firms throughout the country, like a lot of the billboard lawyers that you see in the different markets that you go to. In most cases, those are our clients. I've been working in SEO for 2 decades now. The gray hair exposes that, right? And I got into legal marketing. Life happens on accident, right? You have a plan, and then all of a sudden life happens, right? And that's how I ended up getting into SEO, which was in 2001. I was going to college at UNLV. I just got out of the Air Force, so I served my country for 4 years, stationed in Las Vegas, had met my wife. That's a whole nother story. We met on day after Valentine's Day, and we got married a month and a half later. And
wow,
on April Fool's Day, I came home, half jokingly said, "Hey, let's get married." She said half jokingly, "Yes." Next thing you know, we're getting married, right? So that was 25 years later. So it was actually, it worked out, right? 3 kids later. But back to the SEO story. So I was going to college. I was married. I was a radio personality. I know we have that similar thing as far as DJing. And next thing you know, I'm going to college, going to go to law school. And then my side hustle was DJing weddings on the weekends. And so I had to find a way to generate more business. And so I found SEO. And I stumbled upon it. I read a book about it. And next thing you know, I was kind of like immersed in this industry. I knew that was going to change marketing as we knew it. And so I went all in.
This is 2001.
This is 2001. I started and then as an entrepreneur, right, you don't just have one company, right? You now all of a sudden you've got a million ideas. And so I'm like, wouldn't it be amazing if there was like a place where brides can plan their wedding online? And so I built a website called Vegas Wedding Mall at the time. And that was like one of the first wedding directories. And that's where I basically taught myself SEO. And Los Angeles Wedding Mall was built, and then Seattle Wedding Mall. And so I ended up selling those, and then found my way back into the legal space again.
Interesting. So, SEO in 2001 was what? Keyword stuffing?
Keyword stuffing, white text on white backgrounds.
Yeah.
Meta keyword tags that work.
Get the words on the pages, and the search engine will find them.
It was a lot easier, but a lot more mysterious, right? Because it was like a new thing. If you knew SEO back in those days, you were like a small god. Yeah. You were.
Yeah, that makes sense. What did you, so you did something that people still do today, which is just built out the same site in a whole bunch of different areas. Yeah. And just drove, because local traffic is easier than, national or global traffic.
Yep.
So build out the local sites. What did you sell those for, and why did you sell them?
So we ended up, it's not like the story where you think I became rich from it.
Right. That's why I like to talk about it.
Yeah. It's actually just the opposite. Hey, we're here to be vulnerable, right? Yeah. I mean, like most people watching this, they want to learn from people's failures and not their success. And so with that, in hindsight, you said that it makes sense to kind of build a bunch of local websites. But knowing what I know now about SEO, it would have made more sense just to build out one site, and that one website could service Seattle and like a Knot, right? There's a site called the Knot, or there's a site called Wedding Wire, right? These are like national websites that like have unlimited resources, right? It would have made more sense to do that because when you're doing SEO, you're driving links to a website, and the links is really the currency that makes it rank. So instead of having one website that has a lot of authority, now you have to like spread that with 12 or 15 websites. And so the story with that is we actually had one site, and it was Vegas Wedding Mall. And we're like, hey, this is great. Let's create Seattle Wedding Mall. Let's create Los Angeles Wedding Mall. Let's create Phoenix Wedding Mall. And so we just replicated the actual site, which wasn't hard because we had the technology. But what we did was we're like, okay, great. Let's hire a call center. Let's get a call center. Let's get people dialing for dollars. And so we set this up, and it turned into a full business. And next thing you know, we had people that were basically coming in and getting on phone calls and telling these people that had wedding businesses anything that they needed to say to get them to sign up, right? And so these salespeople were a little dubious, right? And we weren't monitoring calls at the time, right?
No.
And so somebody would be like, oh yeah, it's $99 to sign up, right? Just because they wanted to get that $100 spiff that was on the wall for the day, right? For the person that gets the first close or the fifth close, right? And so people were being lied to. And so we didn't know that. And then next thing you know, we got the business. And this is like now, 8, 9, 12 months into this. And then we woke up one morning, and we were expecting a large batch of money to hit our account, and the money didn't hit. And I go to my business partner at the time, like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, wasn't our payroll's due in a couple of days? Like, the money hasn't hit yet. And then we called up, and they're like, oh, you guys exceeded the 3% chargeback rule. And so I go, do you know anything about this? And he pulled out like a stack of chargebacks. He's like, oh yeah, I didn't know that they were going to do anything. And so we ended up on this like blacklist. And so we ended up having to kind of like shut the business down. And then we ended up selling the assets to somebody else. But it wasn't like this fairy tale story that like one would believe. Yeah.
So that blacklist is called the match list.
Okay, so yes, this is your whole business, right?
Right.
You know this more better than I do.
I have these stories and calls multiple times a day.
Perfect
every day of my life.
Yeah.
And what's crazy about it is like, the number of, I'm talking close friends, people that I've known forever, or that I've known for a little while, but we hang out all the time. They're like, oh, no, we're fine.
Yeah.
We're not high risk. Like, it's not our issue.
Oh, yeah.
Because that happens even if you don't get a ton of chargebacks. But when you do get a ton of chargebacks, certainly if you have people that are lying on the phone.
Sure.
Yeah. That's terrible.
Not fun,
nope.
And then we had to try to find high risk merchants, and we get shut. We were like almost like a porn website, you know what I mean? That's how they were treating us, you know, and it wasn't like that. But yeah, boy, it's crazy times.
Yeah, there are very few companies out there that truly do high risk credit card processing and can delineate the difference between what is actually high risk or a space that has the propensity to be, but isn't really.
Sure. Well, the company that took us on, I still remember the name because it was like a lifesaver. It was called Humboldt, I think. I'm not sure if they're still around. But
they are, and they're actually in Southern California.
They are? Okay, so they were the ones that kind of saved our business at the time. But yeah, that was the company we used.
Yeah, we have a portfolio of business with Humboldt, actually.
Okay.
They were acquired, and there's a whole story there, but I'll not geek out on payments too long here. But yeah, it's a far too common story. Yeah. So that ultimately was crippled the business. That was the end of the business.
It was, and so at the time I'm like, my kids were, I had kids at the time and they were about to start going into like grade school. And so I'm like, is Vegas really the place that I want to raise my kids and my family? And so we decided this is the perfect time. And so we decided to move to the South. And so we moved to Georgia. I had friends that were living there. I ended up connecting with a guy by the name of Brad Fallon, who is
I know Brad well.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last time I saw him, I beat him in chess and it pissed him off.
He's so smart.
He is super smart.
He's got like one of the highest IQs I've ever met.
I was impressed with myself for beating him in chess.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, he had a company called StomperNet.
Yep.
If you remember those days.
I do.
And so him and Andy Jenkins. And so I ended up moving out to the South and connecting with Brad. And I worked with Brad on his 999 launch, which was September 9th of 2009, right? And I knew a lot about SEO, and he was one that got me into law firm marketing, believe it or not. So it's a good transition.
Wild. Because
Brad was kind of like the SEO guru, right? Everybody knew of Brad as like the SEO guru because he had StomperNet, which was one of the first places where you can learn SEO, right? And they did this launch where they made like $12 million like in like a couple hours, right? By getting people to sign up for StomperNet, where you can learn this stuff. And so I was out in Georgia living there, working a little bit with him, doing some of my own stuff too. I was doing affiliate marketing and I was doing some drop shipping at the time. And I was also doing SEO for 2 poker websites, which we can talk about too. But Brad came in one day and said, hey, I got asked to speak to a group of lawyers tomorrow. He goes, you know a lot more about SEO than I do. I don't really keep up with this. I know I'm online the guru, right? But you probably know a little bit more about the tactics that work today. He goes, why don't you come with me? I'll just say a couple of things. I'll introduce you and you can kind of do like a, presentation. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about like law firm or marketing, like that, but why not, right? And so we went there and he got up, said a couple words. I put together a presentation and I'm like, hey, I know you guys are a bunch of DUI lawyers. My presentation is not going to talk about how to rank for those terms, but it's the same principles. I'm going to show you how I was able to rank on Google for keywords like online wedding favors or online poker, right? That was a keyword that we were trying to like rank for at the time. So I gave this presentation, and by the time I got off of the stage, I had like 7 lawyers that approached me and said, hey, that was really awesome. I'm paying my SEO person like $7,000 a month and they're not doing any of this stuff. Like, could we hire you to do this? And I'm like, well, sure, give me your business card. We can certainly talk. And so I left there with like 7 or 10 business cards and what turned into about $30,000 to $40,000 in recurring revenue.
Amazing.
As doing just consulting. Yeah.
Wow.
From one presentation.
Damn. So I mean, there's so many great things about that story for me personally, because I didn't, I've known Brad Fallon for a long time, and actually we do his processing.
Oh, do you?
Who is now, there's a whole story there. But I love that part. I love the throwback to StomperNet. Knew that you went through that.
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting takeaways for most people can be that when you present a complex topic to others and you literally share everything, you teach people how to do it. You tell them the whole thing. There is a huge portion of the business community that will just say, I don't want to fucking
do it for me.
Do it for me.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, yeah.
Do it for me.
Yeah.
And so you launched functionally the agency through for SEO for lawyers in that moment by getting a handful of clients and getting $40,000 a month recurring.
It's exactly right. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. That wasn't my strategy by any means. Yeah. One of my gifts, I guess, in life is I'm very good at breaking down something complex and making it very easy to understand, right? And so SEO was that, right? SEO was something that was very nebulous, confusing. And so I just got up there and I'm like, look, just do this. I was like sharing the exact strategies that they can all go home and do themselves. And like you said, they didn't want to do it themselves. Their time is better utilized being in court or, on the phone dealing with new clients that they can get. And so, that was it. And that was my first agency. It was an agency called Everspark Interactive. And we ran that agency for about, I don't know, maybe like five or 6 years. And then we got known into doing law firm SEO, and we mostly worked just with law firms like that. Started to attend a lot of the conferences, started to be asked to speak at some of the conferences. And the next you know, now I'm becoming like a thought leader, I guess, in that space.
Legal SEO.
In legal SEO. And
wow.
then, yep. And so that was a great journey. Learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes, had a couple business partners. We ended up buying one of the business partners out. And then in 2008, my business partner at the time scheduled a meeting with me. It was a breakfast. We walked in. I had no idea what he was going to share. And he said, I'd like to buy your interest out. He goes, you have one vision for the company. I've got another vision for the company. And I want to, maybe buy your interest out. And I'm like, okay. And so he gave a number. I gave a number. We kind of met in the middle. And I ended up selling my equity in that agency, which is still around now. And it was perfect timing because my wife was pressuring me to get back to the West Coast, right? Everything happens for a reason, right? There's no coincidences in life. It's like, and so this was part of our fate, our destiny of what was going to happen. My young son, Zach, who was probably 9 or 10 at the time, was just getting into acting. He had a agent that wanted to work with him that lived in California. My wife wanted to get to the West Coast because her family is in Vegas and she wanted to be closer to them. And so it was just, the timing was perfect. And so I sold my interest. We just moved out to California, LA. Here we come. With no place to live. We were just going to do VRBOs for a couple of months. And it was right in the summer. So like the kids didn't have school and it was like a permanent vacation for like 3 months when we got here.
This is 08, 09?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yep.
And so that the first agency you did, was that all specifically legal SEO?
I would say like 90% of what we did was legal. But, there was, other companies that came in and we just didn't turn them down.
Sure.
But we weren't marketing it as our agency as like exclusively legal. We were just,
you were doing.
We just catered to that. Yeah.
And so the agency now, was that the next chapter? Did you start that agency?
Yes. So fast forward now again, 2008. 2008, I take that back. 2008 is when I launched EverSpark Interactive. 2015 is when we relocated to California and I sold my interest. So we're talking 2015 now, right? And so we get in a car, we drive out west, we stay in some VRBOs, and I'm financially secure, right? So it's not like I need to kind of go find a job quickly or anything. So I ended up living in a place called Toluca Lake, which is not too far from here. I was playing a lot of tennis. I was playing tennis every single day.
Wow.
Which was really cool.
It's a lot of tennis, man.
A lot of tennis. And with some of the biggest stars that you probably know. It's like the celebrity plays.
Crazy.
Like I'd be just sitting there playing tennis, this guy was my partner for like an hour and a half. We're playing tennis together. Like we sit down and we're just having casual conversations as we're drinking water. And it's like, what do you do? It's like, oh, I edit all of the Star Wars trailers. Wow, that's really cool. Like, what about you? Oh, I'm an actress. Oh, okay. What about you? Oh, I'm in a band. Oh, cool. Like, give me the name of your band. I'll go home and YouTube you guys, And he's like, oh, Maroon 5. You know what I mean? Like those kind of stories, and so it was great. I played a lot of tennis, and next, I got bored. Your mind has to get stimulated, and I was not going to be a professional tennis player. I was just doing that. And so I'm like, well, maybe I'll do it again. And so I created another agency, which was basically just leveraging my name. And at the time, it was just called Hennessey Consulting, because I thought it was just going to be me doing some consulting. And that turned into something much bigger later. But, next thing you know, I got one client and then I got another client. And my partner, or my deal with my partner, was that I could compete, but I just couldn't take any of their clients or their staff, right? So
fair.
I could basically kind of just compete with them. And so I got another lawyer client, next thing you know, I was playing tennis 5 days a week. I went to 3 days a week. Now I don't even play anymore, right? Because I've been so busy. And that was kind of the genesis of my second agency. Again, started 2015, and here we are 9 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what was the second time around, what was the growth trajectory like? What was, revenue year 1, 2, 5?
Yeah.
What did the path look like?
So the first year was, I think I started it in May. And the first year, I think we did like $185,000 for the year, right? It was just me and like one like assistant, really. Second year, we were like probably doing like 1.6 million.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Big jump.
Yep. Third year, we were now probably doing like 2.8. The next year, we were probably doing, this was the year that I paid a very large tax bill. And I want to say we were doing, let's just call it like $3.5 million, right? And it was very profitable, right? Because you don't have a lot of people, my margins were really high. But the problem with that is, I was doing a lot of the things, right? And so like if we would go to Hawaii, I'd be out on the beach, and all of a sudden my alarm would go off. It's like, hey, you've got to go upstairs because you got to take a sales call, right? And I'd go upstairs, have to take a sales call in my bathing suit, right? And then come back downstairs. And then all of a sudden, 4 o'clock, I got to be back up there because I got to be on a call with a client, right? And so like I wasn't really living a balanced life, right? And so at the end of the year that year, like I said, I had to write a very large check to the government. And I'm thinking to myself, why? Like, what was all that for? Like, why don't I just hire people that are smarter than me, right? And just instead of paying the government, don't get me wrong, I pay my fair share of taxes, right? But instead of making large payments, hire really smart people. And so that's when I recruited a COO of my company. His name is Scott Shrum. He had just exited another company as the COO of that company. And he was just looking for a new opportunity. He's a super sharp guy, got an MIT degree, Kellogg MBA, right? And so perfect person to kind of take my company to the next level. And then when we brought him on board, he's like, you need somebody to help out with finances. By the way, my CFO is also looking for an opportunity. So I'm like, there was not really budgeted for her, but I'm like, we'll just make this work, right? And so we ended up getting Michelle Patrick, who's our CFO, and him, and they've worked together for 12 years, right? So that's like a package when you can get people that have worked together. And then about 6 months later, we ended up recruiting their CTO of the company. So I got like basically my whole C-suite in the matter of like 6 months.
And they came from an
and
agency.
they came from, it wasn't an agency, it was a company that sold test prep for colleges. And so, but they worked with an agency. And so, and then at that point, that's when they started to put systems and processes in place and setting goals and then really letting the entrepreneur be the entrepreneur and putting in the infrastructure to kind of really scale the business. And that's when we really started to scale. And I think at that point, we kind of jumped to like 8 million and 10 million. And next thing you know, like this year, we're on pace to do 20 million.
Beyond a Million is brought to you by Easy Pay Direct. If you're an entrepreneur and you are still using a product like Stripe or PayPal to accept payments, it is time to find out why the largest names in your industry would never consider doing that. Check out easypaydirect.com/BAM to find out more.
I think I know that a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid of overspending on roles. And certainly once some success, certainly in the beginning, you just don't have any money, right? If you bootstrap. But then you hit a point that you did, which was there was money there. But it's still scary to eliminate basically your whole margin or a big chunk of it. What gave you the confidence to eliminate your margin and invest in the C-suite?
For one, it was the track record, right? They've already brought another company, right, to exit. Your gut, Like my gut was really a big part of it. And the fact that I just needed help, right? I had this huge opportunity to bring on some really smart people. And I really, like I said, I'm a big believer that, I don't get introduced to people for like random reasons. It's like me and you are speaking right now because of a reason. Eric connected us. We'll probably be lifelong friends after this, right? It's just like things happen for reasons. And I just kind of were reading the signals. And I'm a risk taker, right? So I just did. I took the risk. Worst thing is like after 3 months, it didn't work out. You know what I mean? Scott went on his way and I go on my way. But it ended up working out. And so it was a blessing at the time.
Do you think 3 months is long enough to assess?
No, I use that. No, it would not have been. If anything, just from a cultural perspective, right? It's like, oh my God, he's an asshole, or I'm an asshole.
Sure,
You know what I mean? I could not work with
We don't
that
get
person.
along.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Well,
if anything, that would have been it.
I ask that sincerely because you, through conversation leading up to this, you mentioned that you've been working with Cameron Harold. He's been your coach for a long time.
Yes.
Who's also been on the show. He's one of the only people that's been on twice.
Okay.
And he's a very close friend of mine. And he is very firm that if you don't know if somebody's a good fit in 3 months, you don't know how to hire.
Sure.
And that's, I respect Cameron a lot, and that hurts me inside. and I'm also, self-aware enough to realize that I am not the best person at hiring, and I'm always learning and going through that process.
Yeah.
So it was a genuine question.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. I think that camp is split there.
Oh yeah.
So,
story about Cameron. We'll come back to Cameron. Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
Yep.
So you grow, and you're very. One of the questions that I have about agencies in general is vertical specificity, and what I mean by that is both industry specificity, but really more it's focusing on. You said you do some paid, and that's probably, well, you can tell me, but there are agencies that have one thing, and they're like, we do SEO, which seems to be largely you.
That's us.
And then there are others like Eric Huberman, like Hawk Media, and they say, we do everything.
Sure.
Why, as an agency, why did you pick to be specific to SEO versus offering everything? Because certainly people asked you for everything.
Sure. Yeah. We went that direction because that was really like my personal passion and my personal skill set, right? And we had some really amazing case studies, right? So we've done it, right? We've taken firms and we've really kind of exploded their practice by generating a lot of traffic and leads and revenue for them. And so we're just like, let's just continue to double down. We've got a strategy that works here. And a lot of the people that we speak to aspire to be like this firm. So let's just continue to do that. And, for many years, like I didn't even have a website. Like I think I had like a one-page website that just said, hire Jason Hennessey, right? That was basically it. Even when Scott joined my company, it was just a one-page website. He was like, is this like legit? Is this like a real thing? Here he is like, you could probably go work for Google and like, when you've got that kind of background, and he's coming to work for some entrepreneur that has a one-page website, right? So we just kind of that's just it, and typically when I get on a call, like a sales call, because I was doing most of the selling. I didn't have salespeople, like I was doing selling, and it was just me just basically teaching, like educating people. I was not really selling. I was just showing them what we've done for this firm, right? And this is the strategy that we use. And the same thing that I did on that presentation, right, many years back, where I got my first 7 clients for the first agency, you just do that. And I just come across as genuine because I'm not selling them anything. I'm like, this is what I do. And then from there, they tell somebody else and they tell somebody else. And next, you go from 10 clients to 20 clients to 30 clients, right? And so up until recently, we've just basically did that. There was a time where we had a client that asked us, they said, this is a funny story. They said, we need somebody to do social media, organic social media. Can you guys do that? Like, yeah, of course we can do that, right? All right, well, send me over a proposal. We're like, okay, what does a proposal look like for social media? I don't know, $2,500 a month. Okay, great. Can't be hard, right? We'll just schedule some posts, right? 5 days a week, and that's that, right? And so we did that, right? And
how long ago was this?
This was probably like 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
And so now we're doing social media, but we only had one client, right? Just because they asked us. And so then we had to staff it out and we had to get somebody to do it, right? And I'll never forget it, right? And so it was around St. Patrick's Day. And all of a sudden I get a phone call and it's this client. And I'm like, oh, that's weird, right? And I call up to like, what are you thinking? I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, the whole world is like shutting down, like COVID is about to happen, like, and you're up there posting on our social media to have a leprechaun day or something, right? Because it's like St. Patrick's Day. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh my God, I'll get it taken down immediately. I'm so sorry about that. It was just something that was scheduled, right? You know what I mean? And so I'm like, what are we doing? Like, you know, we're not making any money here. Yeah, like, what are we doing? We're not making any money here. So we removed the post. And then I went to lunch that day at In-N-Out Burger, right? And it had this epiphany. And I'm sitting at In-N-Out Burger and I'm like, I'm sure somebody pulled up to In-N-Out Burger at some point and wanted to order a chicken sandwich, right? You're not getting a chicken sandwich at In-N-Out Burger. You can get a double, a cheeseburger, or a hamburger. That's it. That's all we do, right? And so I'm just like, there's something to simplicity, right? And so that's probably the reason why we haven't really ventured out to do much more than just doing SEO and doing it very well and doing paid media, which is par for the course. You know, that's just part of what we do too. Yeah.
I love that. Mm-hmm. And so why law?
Well, why law is just because like I accidentally stumbled into that area. And then over the years, I've become a thought leader on that subject. I've been asked to speak at conferences.
Organic growth.
It's all organic growth.
So that's interesting because one of the questions that I had for you is what has your client acquisition strategy been? Mm-hmm. And as an SEO person, it seems unusual for you to basically say referrals.
Sure.
But it seems like that is the acquisition model.
100%. Yeah, that's been it. Reputation. There's so many different agencies. Like I go to these legal marketing conferences and you'll see like an agency there like 5 years ago, right? And all of a sudden they're there and they're getting new clients. They're promising the world, right? And next thing you know, these people don't show up the next year, right? Because they probably screwed people over, right? Mm-hmm. They made people angry. They just can't show face anymore, right? Whereas I've been in this industry for, like I said, since 2008 in the legal space. And I don't have one bad review about me online.
Well, let's talk about SEO a little bit then, because SEO, you mentioned back in the day, it being sort of a black box. Mm-hmm. For most entrepreneurs, it's still a fucking black box.
Sure.
And when you hire, it's sort of like hiring to create content. Mm-hmm. What do you look for? What should one look for when they're assessing an SEO agency?
Sure. I would say find an agency or an individual that has experience in the niche or vertical that you're in. Because if somebody came to me and said, hey, Jason, like, I've got this e-commerce website, you know what I mean? We're looking to compete with Zappos, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's other people that I could recommend that know that vertical and that space way better, right? Mm-hmm. It's a whole different platform. So I would say find somebody that, has experience, that has case studies in that vertical, that speaks the language and the vernacular, that goes to the conferences, that, because like that's the advantage is not only do we know SEO, but when we get on calls with clients, we know about their intake. We know who they use for their call center. We know who they use for, all after hours, all this stuff, right? So now we're like tied in. And so we're able to kind of help them out, just not in the SEO space, but also making connections with, oh, you've got this case in this market. Let me make a connection, right? And so that's really what I would say is find somebody that, if it is an option, find somebody that specializes in that niche.
Well, let's back out for a second. Let's talk about the elements of SEO as you see them, because I think in general, this notion of hire somebody that's done exactly what you want to do makes tons of sense. In SEO, you've got sort of on-site and off-site. How do you think about the core elements of SEO?
Sure.
And how do you rank their importance?
Yep. So there's basically three, and I wrote a whole book about this. It's called Honest SEO.
Honest SEO?
Honest SEO, yeah.
Love it.
And so there's three core principles of SEO, really four, but let's talk about the first three. The first thing is just the technical makeup of the website, right? So having a website that Google can crawl, doesn't have a lot of errors, it loads fast, right? You have basically that. And that's the stuff that usually most people can't figure out on their own.
What is fast?
So there's something called there's a tool called PageSpeed Insights. And so if you go to Google, you put that in, you could put your URL into PageSpeed Insights, and then you click on it, and it's going to give you a score. You're either going to be red, yellow, or green, right? And so fast is green. Anything in the green is fast. And there's a different score for mobile as there is desktop, right? And so you want your website to be fast for both. And you also want your website to pass something called Core Web Vitals. And in that same tool, it'll tell you whether or not it passes or fails. It's like bringing your car to a check engine, you're to a mechanic and the check engine light is on. It's going to tell you what's wrong with it. So that's the first piece. And we can probably do a podcast about technical SEO for a long time.
We could talk for 8 hours or 8 years about SEO.
But basically, the technical elements of a website make up probably 15 to 20% as far as like the weight of that, right? The second piece is the content, right? The content that you publish that truly satisfies the intent of somebody that's doing a search for whatever it is that you're trying to market. So for us, it might be having a page on a website for Atlanta car accident lawyer, Atlanta slip and fall lawyer, right? So people that are actually getting into a car accident, they're doing a search for car accident lawyer. Google knows that that person is doing a search from Atlanta. We have our page optimized for Atlanta car accident lawyer, and we kind of make the connection. Hopefully that page truly satisfies the intent. It's not written with a lot of keywords at the beginning like it would have worked back in the day. It's like really written as far as like getting empathetic, like saying, hey, if you're reading this, you or a loved one were involved in a car accident. Like at our law firm, we've helped people just like you, where we can help you pay your medical bills. We can get your car repaired. We can help you find a doctor, right? Really kind of truly satisfying. Maybe have a video on the page that walks them through the experience of their firm, right? So like that's something, is making sure that you have content that satisfies the intent of what people are searching for. The third, I would say that right there is probably the other, if it's 15%, this is probably more of like 35%, the content.
Are you writing content for specific keywords from the beginning?
We are, yeah. So when we build a website, our whole strategy is mapped out in an Excel spreadsheet. So we know, like, based on who we're working with, like which cities do they target, which practice areas do they target, what are the most profitable practice areas. So we know the architecture of the whole website, right? It's like building a company where you already have the org chart for a 1,000-person company, right? And then you just start filling in the content,
the
right?
roadmap for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
So that's how we do things. And so that alone is about 35% of the strategy. So now that equates to 50%, right? The other 40%, which is the third variable, is, and there's 10%, which I'll talk about in a second, but the 40%, which will bring it to 90, is the links, right? And so that's basically the currency on the World Wide Web, is getting other websites to link back to you, right? And so not every link is equal. If I can get CNN to write a story about personal injury lawyers in Atlanta and that links to my client, that's like gold, right? Because that link has a lot more value than if my friend had a locksmith shop that's linking back to my client's website. So the person that wins the game of SEO kind of really gets all three of those correct, right? And then the last piece is really the user signals. And so that's the stuff that people don't really think about. but that's where somebody's doing a Google search and they search for car accident lawyer. They click on your page. Google's measuring the time that somebody stays on the page before they go back to Google, right? So if somebody clicks on your page and they're only there for 7 seconds, it's telling Google that this page doesn't satisfy the intent of that search. And so they go back and then they go to another page that's below you, and that page has a video, and they watch the video and they're on the page for like 10 minutes. Boom, next you know, they're going to rank higher than you because it's sending all these user signals, right, to Google that, hey. So once you get to the first page of Google and you get more impressions, that's when the user signals all kick in.
Yeah, I think the user signals are something that we're starting as social media has evolved, and we could get into this, but as social media has evolved, it's clear that engagement with things is a metric that's really relevant.
100%.
Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And basically what you're saying is the same thing's true with SEO.
It's the engagement. Yep. User signals, engagement. Yep. Same thing. Yep. Exactly right.
I love it. So where do you start with people? If somebody comes to you, what's the first thing? Do you you build out this plan?
Yep.
What's the general arc of what you focus on first, second, third?
Yeah. So the first thing that we do is usually when we get a new website or when we get a new client, we inherit the mess that the former agency did, right? And so we do things a certain way, from the way in which the navigation works, to the way in which the phone number appears, to the way in which the hamburger navigation opens up, right? All of that stuff. We do it all kind of the same way. And it's not like a template per se, but it's a strategy.
And just for those that don't know, hamburger navigation is the button you click that expands to give you the other menu items.
Yeah, when you're on a phone and you click like navigation and it opens up the navigation, then you close it, right? It looks like a hamburger, and that's why we call it that. So we do things a certain way. And so usually once we start working with a new client, there's a couple things that we're going to do. If the client wants to redesign their website, if they're not happy with the look and feel of it, we'll work on that, right? So we've got a creative team that will come up with concepts for like a redesign. But in the background, we're rebuilding the whole website. That's like one of the first things that we do within the first like 60, 90 days is kind of truly architecting the whole website so that it does fixes all the technical blockers, right? We take their content, we run it through duplicate content filters to see if there's any problems with that. And so that's basically like the first, let's just call it 90 days is like rebuilding the engine of the site.
Structure.
Yeah.
Technical.
Yep. While we're doing that, we're also developing the content strategy. We're starting to write the content for the firms. We're sending over pages for them to review. We are publishing content. We're interlinking things a certain way.
Like the pages on the site.
Yeah, how they link together. Like that's one of the secrets of SEO is just the way you link pages together. The best example of like best class SEO is if you look at Wikipedia. So if you do a Google search today for just about anything, like a dictionary word, a sports team, you name it, you're probably going to see Wikipedia ranking in like the top 3 of Google for just about everything, right? Why? Well, for one, they've got a lot of authority, right? Because they've got all kinds of people linking back and sourcing them. 2, the content is constantly changing. Like people are updating it, right? You have all of that, right? So the content is always fresh and up to date. I mean, O.J. Simpson will die today, and an hour from now, like it'll say that his death was today, right? On Wikipedia, right? I mean, that's usually just how it works. But the secret of Wikipedia is the little blue links, right? So if you do a search for baseball, you're going to get to the baseball page. On that baseball page, it's going to talk about a catcher, a pitcher, second base, a home run. And so if you click on home run, guess what? Now you have this long and thorough document about a home run. But all the links on Wikipedia just have that one blue link that's basically telling Google what this page is about, right? And so this is where so many people get it wrong. You just hire somebody to blog for you, and they're just randomly interlinking whatever they want with no strategy. And next thing you know, you're linking, like you might have a page that's optimized for car accident lawyer, but if you're linking to a blog post and then another page and the contact us page, all using the word car accident lawyer, now you're confusing Google. You just need to dominate one page and all your links need to go back to that page.
Yeah, we could keep going down that rabbit hole. I mean, when I came in, we were talking about using either of the studios and using your equipment because your equipment is dope.
Yes.
And both of us, you were like, well, I don't really know how to use it.
Yes.
You said, if you know how to use it, go ahead.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know how to use it either.
I don't know how to use it either. And it's probably pretty easy, at least one of the setups.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you reach some point in business where you can't be an expert in everything.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to pay the experts to do it. So the nuance of SEO, I think, is super relevant and interesting. But I think for most people listening, they're probably going to pay for it. And so I think that some of the guiding principles are super interesting and relevant. And I guess one of the questions I have for you to that end is, when do you suggest a company hires an agency versus building out an internal team to do the SEO?
Sure. That's a really good question. I think you have to hire somebody that is truly passionate about SEO if you're going to bring it in-house, right? Or I would probably say you want to know enough about it yourself so that you can hold somebody accountable to getting the results that you need. I've seen so many horror stories where people thought that that was the case, right? They're spending so much money on SEO with an agency and they're thinking, let me just kind of bring it in-house. For as much money I'm spending, I can have it in-house, right? And so they bring it in-house and they bring in some guru and it just, for whatever reason, doesn't work out, right? And I've also seen stories where it actually worked out fine, right? You bring somebody in and it worked out great. But there's a risk either way. I think if you're small and you're just kind of getting started, I think usually the agency route is the way to go. Just because like they already have all the resources that you would need and you pay a discount, right? They have somebody that can create a new landing page for you. They have somebody that can write the copy. They can have somebody that does the link building. They can have, right? You'd have to hire a team of like 8 people to kind of satisfy all of that. Whereas like maybe once you're actually starting to spend $100,000 a month on an agency, maybe it might make sense to look at, taking those resources and starting to build an in-house team. And now you have kind of like your own mini agency that's just servicing your account, right? So I think you'll know when the time is right. And hopefully you learned a lot from the agency. You paid attention to it so that you can replicate what they've done.
Yeah, I think that's that idea of hiring people, even if you're paying for their expertise to do it for you, making sure that that's not the only goal and that you're also hiring that expertise so that you can learn something.
That's right.
Is a really, really important dynamic. I had when I was probably 20, maybe I was a little older, but I had a girlfriend who we were traveling salespeople. Basically, we're selling Cutco knives, traveling all over Metro Detroit selling knives. And I bought her one of these early GPS systems, and because it was really just to satisfy my own needs because she would call me every fucking hour asking me how to get somewhere. And at the time, you would travel with these Rand McNally books in your car, right, to navigate. I'm dating myself, and I feel great about it.
Yeah.
But I told her when I bought the nav system, I said, look, you have a real-time map to show you the whole world, right? Use this to learn the landscape, not to just follow the blue line.
Sure.
Because if you just follow the blue line, if this goes down or when you're done with this, you're screwed.
You're lost. Yeah.
And I think the same thing is very true in most areas of business.
Sure.
So if you think that you're going to farm it out and then not have to worry about it again, you're probably playing the game the wrong way.
Exactly right. Good analogy.
So the things that are hot topics now that I think are super relevant for both newbies and people that have internal teams. How does AI impact SEO in terms of the quality of content that gets produced, and where does it fit into the strategy?
Yeah. So we look at AI, right? You can look at it as an opportunity or a threat, right? The people that look at AI as like a threat to their business, right? good luck. So we've been doing a lot of experimentation with AI. We've turned AI into a revenue stream. We've done some pretty cool things with it. We use it now to help write some of the content that we publish for our clients. Not so much that we just say, hey, ChatGPT, write us a page of content about Atlanta car accident lawyer, right? I mean, the people that are just doing that, like Google is going to know that that's not good content, right? But we use AI to take competitors' pages that are already ranking in the top 3 positions, and we say, hey, analyze these 3 pages. We want to come up with something similar, and then we kind of then go in and edit it to kind of make it have the voice and the tone of that law firm, right? So that's where you really can kind of leverage AI, because now you're actually looking at different data points and you're actually marrying that together with AI to come up with like the perfectly optimized page for that particular query, right? So that's one thing that we do. Another thing that we did recently, we actually have these hackathons like once or twice a year at our agency. And it's just where we give our engineers like a couple of days just to come up with concepts that they think would, help improve the efficiencies of our agency. And so in one of our hackathons, somebody came up with the concept of using AI to take a full website and to translate the website into multiple languages, right? And so they built this prototype out, in a couple days, and it was just a very beta. And we're like, oh, we're onto something here, right? Because it's unique content, right? The content that we have on the website, if there's 2,000 pages of content on a website, and we basically take it and we use AI to convert the whole website into Spanish. But not just that, it takes all the internal links, it turns them Spanish, right? It does so much more. It creates the Spanish URL structure. It puts specific code on the page to tell Google that this is the English page, this is the Spanish page, right? So next thing you know, we rolled this out on a client as a beta. And here's a client that wasn't getting any Spanish traffic at all. And next thing you know, we rolled this out, pages got indexed. And then now they get like 10,000 visits a month from all the Spanish content that we translated. So much so that now they actually have to get like Spanish people that could help answer the phone because they can't even keep up with demand, right? And that was just all leveraging AI and just coming up with a novel idea. And so now that became a new revenue stream for us because now we're selling that as a service to all of our other clients, right? So that's just one example of us just kind of leveraging AI. Yeah.
That's cool. Another area that AI has wedged its way into is the actual search queries.
Sure.
So let's talk Bing specifically, and obviously because Google dominates the search market, that's what people usually talk about. How does having AI integrated into Bing search impact sort of intent and the search results?
Yeah. It's definitely still early to kind of come to any conclusions, right? Bing is a little bit more advanced in kind of promoting that in their search engine, even before Google. But they have to pull the data from somewhere. And a lot of that data comes from the way in which you mark up your website. Right. So there's something on a website called schema markup. And so that's the stuff where you can and it's actually like a universal language. It was built so that all search engines can kind of understand semantics of a website. And so, I could basically it's almost like building a secondary website on a website, right? So you have the content that's out there for the world to see, but then you have the second layer of code that says that this is this attorney. He went to this law school. He writes for these magazines, right? And so you're almost like building a whole separate website using specific code to tell the search engines a lot more about this person or this business or this place. Like that's why when you do searches for like blueberry recipes, right? You'll see carousels, right? That'll show like, here's 6 different recipes, right? And it's in a very specific format, right? First you do this. That's all schema markup that's being coded. And so a lot of these AI platforms are using a lot of the schema markup. So it's really important to make sure that you have that all structured.
And that goes back to the technical structure of the website.
Correct. Yep.
AI is going to disrupt lots of industries. If you're an agency owner, for instance, how do you see AI impacting marketing agencies at large in 2024 and beyond?
So for us, I think our biggest threat, right? Google is a search engine, right? You have to look at how do they make their money. They make their money by serving up ads, right? Along the lines of their free content, which is their search engine. So you're starting to see them kind of experiment by placing AI here or here, right? But at the end of the day, like Google, they're going to have to change their whole business model, right? And so they're the leader. We're following the leader. There will definitely be a disruption. Don't get me wrong. Like for example, Bing is starting to get more market share, right? Whereas Google had dominance, right? If Bing gets another 1%, 2%, 3%, right?
It's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
8% is a huge deal in the search market.
Oh yeah, right? So now we're like, okay, great. We've been optimizing our websites for Google. We should probably pay a little bit more attention to the variables that Bing are looking at too, right? And so that's something that we got to do. But I think the biggest threat for an agency owner is the stuff that might keep someone like me like not being able to sleep at night is people not even using Google anymore, right? And then just going to ChatGPT and asking questions and getting their answers there, right? That's the biggest risk, I'd say.
Yeah. I am systemically reconditioning myself to search through Perplexity.
Sure.
Which is a now dominant app for AI results.
Sure.
Because what a lot of the time, well, it depends what you're searching for, right? If you're searching for a product, probably different.
Yep.
But if I'm searching for an answer, where I go to do that's going to change.
Of course. Yeah. Yep. And there's things like, there's things like, AI is not perfect yet, right? I mean, like,
I'd say that's an understatement.
So like, I'm not going to go to AI and talk about like the best way to cure cancer. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to go to a doctor. You know what I mean? Like, so there are things that AI is getting incorrect still. Now, don't get me wrong. They're going to continue to refine it. It's going to get better. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're optimizing for a Google algorithm. At some point, we might be optimizing more for an AI algorithm. You know what I mean? And we just kind of have to change our focus on what the things that we're reverse engineering.
What is something, so you grew the agency from 180 grand to, pushing 20 million this year. What is something that you wish you would have done differently along that journey, or that you will do differently next time around if you build something?
Yes. I wish I would have gotten a coach a lot sooner. It's interesting, right? Like my whole life I played sports, right? And from Little League, right, you had a baseball coach, right? And I wrestled in high school, you had a wrestling coach, right? If you did bad in a subject, you had a tutor, right? So your whole life you have coaches, right? And then once you kind of graduate high school or college, even in college, you have prep courses and stuff like that. You're just on your own, right? Now you're in the business world, right? And a lot of times, like when you're just an entrepreneur, you're just getting started, you're not thinking about that, right? And so I wish I would have gotten a coach a lot sooner, which is probably a good segue to talk about my coach now, right?
Yeah,
which is our mutual friend, Cameron.
Let's plug Cameron Harold. I love it.
He's great. Yeah. And so the story with Cameron is, I don't know, again, back to fate and destiny, but I was just sitting at my desk. It was 2010, maybe, something like that. And along comes a video on YouTube, and it's a TED Talk. And this was a TED Talk about raising your kids to be entrepreneurs, right? And it was Cameron Harold, who I had no idea who he was, but he got on stage. And the fact that he's on a TED Talk, right, already gives me confidence that he's trustworthy, right? And so, but then I start watching the video, and he's just, everything he says is just resonating with me, right? He talks about the fact that, he was a kid selling baseball cards, right? And he would go to the golf courses and get in the water and take all the balls out, right? And like now he'd have like 50 balls. And when the people were coming to play golf, he'd be sitting there, instead of selling lemonade, he'd be selling them golf balls, right? Awesome. And then they would hit it in the water and he'd go again and get it. And it was just like, and so he had all these things. And then he talked about like when he was growing up in Canada, that they made him, he was in French class and he sucked at French, right? And so what did the school system do? They actually told his parents that you need to get your son a French tutor, right? And he's like, but I was really good at public speaking, right? Why would they get me a French tutor instead? Why not double down on what I'm good at, right? And so he showed me some of the flaws with the school system. And he's like, why can't we raise kids to be entrepreneurs? Anyway, it was just an amazing video, right? And it resonated with me. And so I'm just like watching this. I'm like, this is me speaking to me. He was a C student. I was a C student in high school, right? And so it was just awesome. And so at the time, I'm like, this guy's going to be my business coach. He doesn't know it yet, but he's going to be my business coach someday, right? And at the time, we couldn't afford him, right? You know what I mean? It was just, I manifested him to be my coach. And then once Scott and Michelle, my CFO, came on and I started this other agency, we were at now about $5 million in revenue. And I think that was the number that he promotes, that he doesn't really work with other people unless you hit about 5 million. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of his spot. And so I'm like, okay, great. Let's just see how much he is. We probably can't afford him, but let's just see. And so I wrote him like this very clever email. And it was really funny and witty. And I sent it to him, and he responded. He's like, that was the greatest email I ever got, right? He goes, I'd love to coach you guys. Let's hop on a call. Here's my assistant. And so at that point, he came on, and that's when he started to kind of give us a lot of the cliff notes. And he started to, perfect example. There was a time where somebody was, now we're working with Cameron for, let's just say, 8 months. And so we get somebody that actually reaches out to us that wants to buy our company, right? And it's flattering. And so they say, okay, great. We want to buy you. Let's talk. We're going to send over about 12 questions, just answer these 12 questions, and then we'll come up with a valuation on what we'd like to buy you for. And so I'm like, wow, this is awesome. They're a big company. It's like, your ego is kind of stroked a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so we reach out to Cameron, like, hey, listen, we got this great opportunity. And then Cameron just sits us down. He goes, are you guys even for sale? And we're like, well, I guess if the number's right. He goes, well, why are you going to go down this rabbit hole of kind of giving them this information? He goes, that's just going to be a distraction for your CFO, right? Because 12 questions lead to 20 more, lead to, next thing you know, you're 8 months into this due diligence. He goes, if you're ready to sell, what's your number? And I'm like, well, based on where we're growing, maybe it's $75 million, right? He goes, okay, well, if that's your number, just tell him that's your number. And we're like, that's interesting. So we get on a call with them. We're like, hey, listen, based on where we're growing, if we're ever going to sell, like, boom, this would be our number. And then they're just like, whoa, that's a little high. That's not how we build, But anyway, he probably saved us a lot of heartache, right? By kind of this one example. And there's so many more. I've got a document full of Cameron notes that's probably like 40 pages long.
I love that.
It's just awesome.
Well, I think the coaching side of business needs to be underscored and underscored again. Highlighted and drawn attention to, because we live in a world as entrepreneurs where we are expected to make all the choices. Mm-hmm. It ultimately all rolls back to you.
Sure. And
to not have guidance there and to not follow a path from somebody that's already done it is clearly foolish.
Oh yeah.
Yet we hesitate to do it for some reason. Many.
Cameron got Scott to join the CEO Alliance. Man, I'm giving you all kinds of plugs, Cameron, here. And so Scott would go to these 1-800, these COO Alliance meetings where a bunch of COOs get together. And they do this thing where it's like these $100,000 ideas, right? And one of the ideas that Cameron was talking about was get your CEOs to write a book, right? And then Scott came home one day and he's like, you need to write a book. And I'm like, okay. And so next thing you know, I'm writing a book. And, and that was a big part of our growth, right? Because I wrote a book, now I'm an industry expert, but that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Cameron, right? Cameron got me into YPO. He said that I should look at that. So all these little stepping stones, he connected me with all these great people. But anyway, like I said, back to when I was first getting started, to your original question, I wish I would have found a coach. It wouldn't have been Cameron, right? Because I couldn't afford him yet, but a coach to kind of get me from 0 to 1 million. There's probably a coach out there that could have gotten me there faster. And then from 1 million to 5 million might have been a different coach, right? And, I think there'll come a point where if I'm at 20 million and I want to go to 100 million, maybe I need a different coach, right? So it just kind of depends.
Awesome. Jason Hennessey, if people want to find out more about you, where do you want to point them?
Yeah. I've got content on Instagram. I publish content just about every single day, short little video clips. So you can follow me at Jason Hennessey on Instagram. YouTube, I create content. And then my website is just my last name, Hennessey.com.
Hennessy.
EY.
EY.
If you do Y, you're going to get some cognac, and that'll be a fun night, right? But the
had some last night. Oddly. Hennessey.
EY. Yeah.
Hennessey. Awesome. Jason, it's been great, man. I appreciate you carving out time.
This was awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Love it. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed doing it. I need your help. There are 3 places you can find Beyond a Million. The podcast itself, beyondamillion.com, which has some cool free resources, including a free course. And we finally launched the Beyond a Million YouTube channel. I would love it if you would go there and subscribe. And if you don't want to, you still would probably enjoy seeing the visual content. Check it out, youtube.com/@Beyond a Million.